Good morning, friends. Pastor Sara here with our sermon time for today. I'm here to introduce you all to where we're headed today. I'm actually going to introduce you to some important folks that you get to meet. And then after you do meet them, then I'll also set us up for the weeks to come as well. So as we do this, I invite you to just roll those shoulders back, show up, become aware of that breath. Feel your feet here on this floor as we settle into this time and space together. You may have noticed that I'm not actually there with you on Sunday morning. I'm out of town, and so is Jason, and so is Pastor Ryan, and so we also then began to realize, this is really a Sunday, though, that ended up having a lot of moving parts. So I just want to give a big shout out to Anne-Marie, who's leading the band, and to the band, and Pastor Kira, whom you'll meet in a minute, and all the other folks who are making this morning happen. We are always held together by our volunteers here at Salt House, and today is especially one of those days. So thank you to everyone who's just showing up and making it all happen. Thank you. So friends, we are finishing up our Easter season here at Salt House, where we've explored the themes that we named on Good Friday and Easter Sunday, how we follow this pattern of Jesus, right? Deaths and resurrections, this ebb and flow. This is the pattern of our lives. This is life all around us, within us. It's what we live through constantly, always death. Loss, losing control, suffering that we face in our lives in big ways, but also in the small things too. And then always the unbidden, unknown, unrecognizable, surprising new life, resurrection on the other side. So deaths and resurrections, which is so appropriate in this season that we're in of spring, yes, as we see this just being embodied all around us in the sprouts, in the new blossoms, and the new growth. And also what we're experiencing this season with weddings, right, and graduations, barbecues, school parties. We see deaths and resurrections, these endings and beginnings. We're also seeing the reconnection that happens in the spring as we all kind of emerge into the sun and the warmer weather after the cold, gray months of winter. So we're all becoming more mindful again of how connection to others, how community is so formative for who we are. So all this energy really holds true to where we find ourselves this spring here at Salt House as a Jesus community. Right now, this spring, but really every spring, we are attending to certain work as a community of people who organize ourselves within a particular denomination. So Salt House, we are a new church who is a part of the ELCA, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. And though you're here and you don't have to identify as Lutheran at all, just like anything else here at Salt House, there are no labels, no boxes to check, particular beliefs you need to subscribe to. Y'all are welcome. But then each spring here, there's this community energy as we tend to the business and the nonprofit side of being church together. So our church council and our staff have been very busy behind the scenes getting us ready for the new fiscal year that will begin on July 1st. This has meant recruiting leaders for our church council and the various teams that our Constitution designates that we need to have. Then also prayerfully strategizing about our finances and how we want to use the resources that we have. And in all of it, practicing high accountability and transparency as a community. And now, so we are nearly ready for our June 2nd, once a year, annual soiree. Okay, it's actually our annual meeting, but I'm calling it a soiree because it's going to feel like a soiree, okay? It's in just 2 weeks, and today is a different kind of sermon experience as we get ready for that meeting and our year to come beyond that. I know you are stoked that you're here for this. So there are two main things for us to do this day. First, hot off the press, you can grab hold of your very own copy of the Salt House budget for fiscal year 2020. Thank you for everyone who attended our budget forum and gave feedback, who asked questions, and really helped this budget take form. We have hard copies for you to grab after worship. It's also going to be available online. This budget is what we will be voting on in 2 weeks at the soiree. That's right. So take a look if you want to know what's coming. And who doesn't like spending time poring over a church budget? You're welcome. But seriously, though, it's really accessible. So thank you to our council treasurer, Greg Fenich, to Taryn, our community administrator, to our council at large, as well as our staff, as well as our finance team for their vision and work on this as we use what we have to be salt and light in the world. So that's the first thing, the budget. The second thing, in a moment, we will begin to meet our church council candidates for the next year. So just to orient us, here are just a few things about what a church council does in the ELCA. I know, again, who doesn't like hearing about what a church council does? You're welcome. So a church council's role is foremost a legal one. A council or a board is mandatory for us to function as a nonprofit in the state of Washington, as well as to be recognized within the ELCA. So this group holds fiduciary responsibility on our behalf, watching and managing our finances, our staffing, and our property. Their primary responsibility is to watch the many facets of our well-being from the nonprofit business side of things. And beyond the legal role, this team naturally then also keeps an eye on our community's spiritual well-being too. They're a sounding board, they're a team of encouragers for us, looking at the big picture of how we are structured and how growth is happening, how we're living into our core practices as a community as we aim to be a school of love, following the example of Jesus. And to be clear, this team, our church council, is absolutely vital. It's legally necessary to have them, but they are just one team of the many teams and volunteers that we need here at Salt House in order for us to keep becoming who we are together. We are who we are today because from day one, people have stepped into key areas, rolled up their sleeves, brought who they are, and collaborated to make beautiful things happen. Many people doing many small things that end up having high impact. We need you, and we'll continue to need you as we move forward too. And so today, we begin to meet some of our church council members. We're actually going to meet the two who will be new to council this year, Linnea and Macy. So the rest of our crew who have served on the council this past year will be reintroduced to them again in 2 weeks on June 2nd at the soiree. So as we begin to meet our council folks today and then on June 2nd too, don't go thinking, okay, great, they've got it all covered. Again, see this team as setting the pace for all of us. Yes? Yes. So as we hear from them, both today and on June 2nd, I want to offer just a Bible reading today as a way of framing how we hear them and see them and hold them. So today and June 2nd, it's not about bringing up a group of people and saying, look, here are these fine people who have it all figured out and who will be a spiritual example to us all in their shining perfection. Right? And of course, we know that it isn't like that, but too often, even subconsciously, when we have someone stand up front, someone who leads, we put them on a certain pedestal. And to a degree, yes, these folks and others who do work like this, myself included, we are leaders. You know, we must be accountable to the power and responsibility that we're given. But in the Jesus story, it's not a look at these shiny people, ego-centered kind of approach, right? Instead, leadership looks more like this passage that we'll hear, what Jesus describes to his disciples in Matthew 10. You ready to hear it? So just for some context in this Bible passage, we have James and John, two of Jesus' friends, two of his disciples. They go to Jesus and they ask to sit at his right and left sides in his glory, is what it says. They're thinking that when he becomes king, which they fully anticipate, the spots to the right and left of the king are the most honored places, signifying who is next in line. So of course they want to be there. But Jesus is like, you guys, you're getting this all wrong. Have you not been listening to anything I've said? And then the other 10 disciples hear that James and John even ask the question, so they get all in a tizzy. I think probably because they wish they had thought of asking first. But this is where we then jump into this kind of conversation, the unfolding of what has been happening. So Sean's going to come up and read for us. This is Matthew 10, 41 through 45, the Message version.
When the other 10 heard of this conversation, they lost their tempers with James and John. Jesus got them together to settle things down. You've observed how godless rulers throw their weight around, he said, and when people get a little power, how quickly it goes to their heads. It's not going to be that way with you. Whoever wants to be great must become a servant. Whoever wants to be first amongst you must be your slave. That is what the Son of Man has done. He came to serve, not to be served, and then to give away his life in exchange for many who are held hostage.
So here's the thing. The Jesus story keeps turning power on its head. That power would be used to serve others, right? That leaders would make room for those on the fringes to be heard. That's why here at Salt House we make room for anyone who walks through our doors to show up fully as they are in the diversity of experience and belief and perspective that they bring. And yes, for our leaders to see their role as one of service, of servanthood, being servant leaders, present to benefit the community as a whole, listening for God, to really help midwife the process of who we are becoming. All to say, I appreciate all of the leaders in our community so deeply, including the 6 folks who will serve on church council this year, because they are trying to do that work and hold that posture too, right? They do bring just wonderful gifts, and a diversity of experience and perspective to our church council was just what we want. But they're also folks who are just humbly offering their time and their service for us. So as we hear briefly from Linnea and from Macy today, we've asked them to share a brief biography, then to share a quote, something that speaks about their faith, their life. So we just open ourselves up to meeting them and also to letting God speak to us through the words of faith that they'll share. So that's just kind of the posture that we hold ourselves in for today. But first, I'm going to invite up Gila Fine. She's going to take a quick minute to help us understand the who's who of who is on church council now, who's leaving, what spots will be filled by whom. You can see some of this in your bulletin insert as well. Gila has been our council vice president for this past year, and Gila is our candidate for president for this next year, and I couldn't be happier about that. So thank you, Gila. Come on up and get us ready for our council candidates.
Good morning. Good morning. I think I just want to say something quick to follow what Sara was talking about leadership and just being involved. And I just want to say that for me, stepping into leadership and participating at Salt House has just really been deeply meaningful. It's been a way for me to connect more deeply with the community and also with all of you, and it's just really made a difference in my experience here. And so I just encourage you to think about ways that you might like to step in, not because we need soldiers to march on and do the jobs, but really to find ways that really serve you while you're serving us. It's really been exciting for me. So I want to introduce our new council member candidates, but first I want to give you just a quick review of kind of where we've been specifically as it relates to council. So these new candidates will be are for fiscal year 2020, which begins July 19th and then goes through June of 2020. Just that can be a little confusing. So our current council is made up actually of 7 members, and those currently serving are Kim Saunders as president, myself as vice president, Todd McClure as secretary, Greg Fenich as treasurer, and Sara Uri as member at large, as well as Ann Anderson as member at large. And Pastor Sara is also a member of the council. We have 5 returning members this year who will bring continuity to the coming year. I'll be stepping in as candidate for president for the upcoming year. Ann Anderson will continue in her role as member at large for her 2nd year, but will also be working closely with me as we plan for her to move into the president role for fiscal year 2021. Todd McClure will continue as our secretary, and Greg Fenich as our treasurer, and then Pastor Sara is our 7th member. We have 2 folks stepping down from council this year. Sara Uri will be stepping down as member at large as her term completes, but she will continue her good work in leading our welcome team, and we'll be seeing lots of her, continue to see lots of her. And she'll actually be freed up to put more energy into that, which she's showed lots of passion for, so I'm excited to see what happens this year. Kim Saunders, our current president, will be leaving for a much-deserved break after guiding us as a community from the very beginning. I believe it's actually been 7 years from her starting and working towards us becoming Salt House to now. I think I can speak for all of us and say that we're deeply grateful for her leadership. Kim has guided us through every new development from the start and worn many hats along the way, offering her time, creativity, love, and vision. So as Sarah mentioned, our annual meeting and election of new council candidates is coming up on June 2nd, so we won't meet next week, Sunday. It's Memorial Day. We're taking that off, and Sarah will have more to say about that in just a little bit. But I invite you to come and be here on the 2nd. It's our annual meeting, and it's also the way to vote. You need to be here in person to vote, and so please come and participate in that. There's information in your bulletin as well as on the website about the new council, all the new council members for fiscal year 2020. So my hope is that this new year just brings the right mixture of new adventures, challenges, and laughter such that we can continue to connect and grow as a community and stay awake to the wonder and blessings Salt House holds for all of us. So now I'd like you to meet our 2 new council member candidates. First, I want to invite up Macy Zwanzig, and she's a candidate coming up for 2 years as vice president. She and her husband Peter are active members in our community, and I've enjoyed getting to meet her in various settings at Salt House and looking forward to what she brings and her unique perspective to council.
I don't know if my slides made it in. No slides. Okay. I had slides, but I guess I didn't get them to Jason in time. So just really briefly, I'll introduce myself. I'm Macy Zwanzig. I teach at Redmond High School, which is not that far from here. I teach science. I'm married to Peter, as Gila said. I have 2 little girls, one who's 4, Delphine, and one who is 1, Sylvia. So my hats are mom, teacher. My husband is on staff with Young Life. Some of you may be familiar with that. And I'm not that involved right now, but have been active in the past. I grew up in Virginia, so Bible Belt, very conservative family. I was actually laughing, thinking to myself this morning, when you are there, usually on Sundays, like at my parents' house, you'll hear clip, clop, clip, clop, clip, clop, and it's all these horse and buggies going to church. So there's this very conservative group of Mennonite folk that live in the town, and it's a college town, and it's Southern. And then there's what are called newer Mennonites, and they are pacifists. So it's like a very weird mix of different perspectives and energy. So I didn't really realize how weird that place is until I moved away from there. And then I was like, wow, that was a weird place to grow up. But my faith has been important to me since I was young, but it has definitely changed and morphed over the years. And so, growing up in a conservative place, and stepping away from there to go to college, my worldview and faith perspective changed a lot, which I think is good and healthy. But when I moved to the Northwest about 10 years ago, I really struggled to connect to a faith community. And so coming to Salt House, I was like, wow, and I think we've only been here for 1.5 years, so it hasn't been that long. But when I came here, it felt like a home, and it felt like it fit who I was. And so I'm really happy to be part of the team and to help serve you guys. And yeah, I think that's it. So, yeah.
So next I'd like to invite up Linnea Anderson, our candidate for council member at large. Linnea, give you a new name. Linnea has been involved at Salt House since before we were birthed, participating in helping to choose our pastor. Good choice, Linnea. And brings a unique form of continuity to the team through her early involvement of our forming.
Hello, I'm Linnea. You probably all recognize me because I hide in the booth. I have the power of the mute, so this is very weird to be up here in front. I grew up here in Seattle, or in Kirkland. I went to Holy Spirit Lutheran Church, which used to be our parent congregation, and then it was 7 years ago, Kim approached me and was just like, it was right after I graduated college from PLU, go Lutz, and she asked me, hey, we're thinking about doing this young adult ministry. What would you think? What do you think? Are you interested? Do you want to do it? You want to be a part of it? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I am still here. So I've been here since the beginning. I remember our interviews with Pastor Sara and our evening dinners that we used to have. We used to have service in the evening time at 5:30, and we'd always have dinner during that time as well before we switched to mornings. But a little bit more about myself. I am a twin. She is not here today, so do not worry. She sometimes sings in the band. Went to Juanita High School, then went to PLU. I currently right now work at Seattle Children's Hospital, and I, surprisingly enough, do audio and video work for Seattle Children's Hospital as well, mainly video conferencing, so I definitely have the mute button all over the place. And I live in Seattle, and yeah, that's about it. I'm looking forward to being in this new chapter and being on council and continuing supporting Salt House in the local community.
Aren't these women fantastic? And again, Linnea and Macy are just our two new candidates for council. We'll reintroduce the rest of the team in 2 weeks on June 2nd at the soiree at our meeting. So we hold Linnea and Macy and the rest of our council team just in love and prayer as we move forward just into that time and that we'll share together as a community on June 2nd. And as we move towards that, I want to close our time by launching us into what's actually happening next Sunday in 1 week, this Memorial Day weekend. You see, here at Salt House, we like to actually practice ways in which we can embody the life of Jesus together. And so we've built a few Sundays of Sabbath into just the regular calendar year, which means we take the Sundays off of Memorial Day weekend and Labor Day weekend, as well as the Sunday after Christmas. Why do we do this? Isn't church supposed to happen like every Sunday? Well, we do this because central to the life of God is a rhythm of rest. And my friends, how much do you need more rest in your life right now? Jason and I refer to the month of May as mayhem, right? There's just so much going on. Every year, every May, it's mayhem. So what better time for us to Sabbath? Sabbath means to cease, to stop. Sabbath is one of the great themes that's woven throughout the Bible. It's in the creation poem of Genesis, where God creates humankind in God's image on day 6. Then what's the first thing that humankind does? Wakes up on day 7 and Sabbaths with God. Sabbath was one of the identifying qualities of Israel, God's people. You knew someone was Jewish because they would be resting every week. Jesus demonstrates this rhythm too. We see him just taking time to withdraw from the crowds, to be alone, to be with friends, to cease, to stop. So we ask you to take next weekend, this holiday weekend, and carve out some time for Sabbath. What can that look like for you? Sabbath is ceasing, but here's the key, and we've said it before, and we'll keep saying it. It comes from Walter Brueggemann's book with the same title. The thing about Sabbath is that Sabbath is an act of resistance. Sabbath is an act of resistance. It isn't just stopping to pour ourselves a cup of coffee, though that can be part of it, right? It is a defiant stance against the typical expectations of our culture. Sabbath is resistance, as it was for Israel, resisting, taking time to rest. And specifically, Brueggemann says it this way. He says, Sabbath is an act of resistance against the tyranny of work, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. Hear it again, my friends. Sabbath is an act of resistance against the tyranny of work, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. Work, anxiety, dissatisfaction. What can it look like to cease for you from work, anxiety, and dissatisfaction? You are commissioned to go and cease this week, really to do it during every week that we have, yes? But we make special time to do it this week to remind ourselves of how we are always invited into this rhythm with God. For me, man, just hearing that I have permission to think about my weekend that way, to remember that this is how God invites me to structure my life all the time, After the mayhem of this past month, I receive this as such a needed and welcomed commissioning. Yes? You too? So let's do it. Yes? Or really, let's not do much. And let's do that together. Okay? And then, so that's next Sunday, then 2 weeks from now, after we've all Sabbathed, we will be back in this room. We need you here in 2 weeks, June 2nd, for our soiree, for our annual meeting. We will gather for our first Sunday of the month feast, so this room will be filled with tables. We'll have our time of worship as we also share in brunch together. Then woven through the experience of worship will be our times to vote together on the budget, our leadership, to actively shape who we will be in the year to come, and to hold it all in prayer and hope. And the table conversations will be set up for connection with one another and for each of us to listen for how we're invited to show up in the year to come in whatever way God is inviting us to do so. And as always, we'll have some fun, some surprises on top of that too. It's a soiree after all. So don't be here next week, right? But do be here the following week. So you do you, Sabbath with God, then we'll be here in 2 weeks as we eat, gather, worship, vote, and shape who we are becoming together. Sound good? Such good stuff, yes? So holding all of this, I know it's a lot. Thank you for hanging in with it. As the band comes back up, let's just take a moment to pray. God, we pause now just to hold all that we've heard and to become aware more deeply of our breath, to be grounded in this place, and also just be in touch with how we're doing in this moment, mindful of the deaths and resurrections that we are in the middle of facing, grateful that even in what feels like deaths, when we're feeling stuck, when it feels hard, when it feels uncertain, that you, God, you are with us. Thank you that you are our God of change, our God of transition. All our deaths and resurrections, we know that you hold them, and we hold them now in your love and light. We also hold collectively the changes our community is facing in these weeks to come, shifting of leaders and shifting of focus and finances. God, we want to be people who use our power to serve. We want to be people who embody Jesus' radical love and welcome and awareness. So may the decisions that we make together reflect this desire and lead us into this next season as a community. And may we each embody this desire in the week to come. As we go out of these doors, may we embody this greater love and acceptance. May we embody what it means to use our power to be a servant for others. So form us, God, by your love, in this way. Amen.